In the city where the sun always shone, there was not a single dark street. Not because there was no night. Night came as it does everywhere, quietly and inevitably. But the residents hung lanterns so densely on every corner, every house, every tree that darkness simply had nowhere left to go. The townspeople were proud of this. Darkness is disorder, they said. Darkness is the unknown, and the unknown is frightening. But a boy named Luca thought differently. He was 10 years old. His hair always stuck out in different directions, as if he had just stumbled out of a strong wind. The pockets of his jacket were stuffed with strange things. A piece of blue glass, an empty spool, 3 pebbles of different shapes. Luca collected everything that seemed interesting to him. And one night he noticed something unusual. It happened when Luca could not sleep. He lay in bed and watched how the light from the street lamp fell through the curtain onto the wall. On the wall was his shadow. An ordinary shadow. Arms, legs, head with messy hair sticking up. Luca turned onto his side. The shadow did not turn. He froze. Slowly turned his head back. The shadow stood on the wall looking in a different direction. The direction Luca was not looking. At something invisible in the corner of the room. "Hey," Luca whispered. The shadow flinched, and in that same second it copied his pose again, as if nothing had happened. Luca lay still for a long time, then carefully raised his hand. The shadow raised its hand. He lowered it. The shadow lowered it. Everything as usual. But Luca had seen. He had definitely seen. On the next night he did not go to sleep. He sat on the bed and waited. At midnight, exactly when the big clock in the hallway struck 12, the shadow came alive again. This time Luca watched carefully. His shadow on the wall slowly stretched. Not the way a person stretches, but the way a cat stretches after sleeping for a long time and finally getting its freedom. Then it looked around. Then it began to move along the wall, exploring the room. It went to the bookshelf and seemed to read the spines of the books. It peeked under the bed. It went to the window and stood there for a long time looking out at the night city. Luca did not move. The shadow was doing everything he himself wanted to do, but had never dared. At exactly 1 in the morning the shadow returned to its place and became just a shadow again. Luca breathed out and decided that tomorrow he would talk to it. This turned out to be not so simple. The shadow did not speak in words. It communicated through movement, like pantomime. When Luca asked a question, it answered with gestures that he needed to learn to understand. Luca learned. He discovered that the shadow was bored during the day, that it did not like too much light. When there was too much light, it became pale and small and felt insignificant. That at night it felt real. He learned that every person in the city had a shadow that also came alive at night. But nobody knew. Because everyone was asleep. Because in the city there were so many lanterns that even sleeping people were never left in complete darkness. "What do you want?" Luca asked one evening. The shadow thought, then made a gesture that Luca did not understand at first. It was as if it were hugging something invisible, pressing it close. "You want to be seen?" he asked. The shadow nodded, slowly and seriously. Luca began to think about how to make that happen. The problem was the lanterns. There were too many of them. With so much light, the shadows were barely visible. Pale, blurred, uninteresting. Nobody paid attention to shadows because they were everywhere and at the same time nowhere. Luca started small. He asked his mother to turn off the nightlight in his room. His mother was surprised. "You used to be afraid of the dark," she said. Luca thought for a second. "I changed my mind," he said. On the first night, without the nightlight, his shadow put on a real performance. Without the scattered light coming from all directions, it became sharp and precise. From the single street lamp outside the window, it stretched across the entire wall. Long and expressive. It danced. It made the shapes of animals. An eagle with wings spread wide, a cat arching its back, a giant striding over mountains. Luca watched with his mouth open. He had never thought his own shadow could do such things. The next day, he told his friend Tom about it. Tom did not believe him. Luca invited him to come that night and see for himself. Tom came and saw. and also could not sleep until dawn, watching as his own shadow on the wall did everything he himself was too embarrassed to do during the day. Jumped, somersaulted, made funny faces. It knows everything you want to do but don't do. Tom whisper, I think so, said Luca. They were quiet for a moment. That's a little frightening, said Tom. It's honest, answered Luca. The word spread quickly. First 2 more children came to look, then 5. Then parents began to hear their children whispering at night instead of sleeping and asked what was happening. One father, a tall, serious man who worked on the city council, came to Luca's house. You are turning off the lights, he said, not as a question, as an accusation. Only in my own room, said Luca. Darkness is dangerous. Darkness is just the absence of too much light, said Luca. There is nothing wrong with it. You just see things in it that you can't see in bright light. The man looked at him for a long time. What exactly do you see? He asked at last. Luca thought about it. Yourself, he said. The man left. But that evening he came back, alone, without his jacket, with a strange expression on his face. Show me, he said quietly. Luca turned off the light in the room, left one candle on the windowsill. The man's shadow on the wall was enormous, and as soon as the room became dark enough it came alive. Luca watched it with surprise. The man's shadow was doing things the man himself had not done in a very long time. It painted, drawing an imaginary brush across the wall. It laughed, opening its mouth wide, throwing its head back. It sat down on the floor and looked at the stars through the window. The man stood beside it and said nothing. When the shadow returned to its place, he did not speak for a long time. I wanted to be an artist, he said at last. When I was a child. Luca did not answer. He just nodded. By the end of the month, half the city had turned off some of its lanterns at night. Not all of them. Not everywhere. But here and there dark strips appeared where shadows became alive and real. People began to notice them. At first they were surprised. Then they began to have conversations, learning, just as Luca had, to read the gestures patiently. Every shadow had something of its own. Something its owner had set aside for later, or forgotten, or been afraid of. An old woman whose shadow waltzed every night. It turned out that in her youth she had studied ballet and stopped because she was afraid of performing. A baker whose shadow built imaginary houses from imaginary bricks. He admitted he had always wanted to be an architect. A teacher whose shadow swam in an imaginary sea every night. She signed up for swimming lessons the very next day. The city was changing. Slowly, but noticeably. One night Luca sat by the window late and looked out at the street. His shadow sat beside him. Just beside him, like a friend. Not doing anything in particular, just being there. Did you know it would turn out this way? Luca asked. The shadow shook its head. No. But you wanted to be seen. The shadow nodded. Yes. And now everyone can see, said Luca. The shadow nodded again, and made the gesture that Luca knew well. The same one, as if hugging something invisible, pressing it close. Only now Luca understood that it was not hugging something. It was hugging him. In the city where the sun always shone, they learned to value the dark. Not all of it. Not everywhere, but just enough for the shadows to breathe. And every night, if you walked along the street and looked at the walls of the houses, you could see them. Long, sharp, alive. They danced and painted and laughed and built and swam and did everything their owners never quite found the time to do. They say it was a boy with messy hair and pockets full of strange things. They say he simply stayed up past his bedtime one night and saw what had always been right there beside him. It's just that with too much light,